The summer of 1989 arrived in West Texas with relentless heat, the kind that made the horizon shimmer and the air feel heavy in your lungs. The farm sat miles away from the nearest town, surrounded by endless fields of dry grass and cracked earth. Rusted fences leaned like tired skeletons, and an old windmill groaned nonstop, even when there was barely any wind. From the moment the three cousins stepped out of the truck, the place felt isolated in a way that made silence feel loud. Ethan was the first to notice how empty everything seemed. No birds in the trees, no insects buzzing in the tall grass. Luke joked that the land looked dead, but his laugh faded quickly. Marissa stayed quiet, gripping the strap of her bag as she stared at a patch of ground near the barn where the soil looked darker, almost disturbed. Their uncle brushed off their unease, saying the land had been through droughts before. Still, the farm carried a strange stillness that felt unnatural. The farmhouse itself was old and narrow, with floorboards that creaked under every step. The walls were covered in faded family photos, but many faces had been scratched out or removed. At night, the house made sounds that didn't match the wind. Slow, dragging noises beneath the floor and soft metallic clinks that echoed through the hallways. When Marissa asked about the sounds, her uncle told her it was just the pipes settling, but the house didn't have pipes that old. During the day, the cousins worked in the fields, repairing fences and cleaning out storage sheds. In one locked shade near the back of the property, Luke noticed heavy chains, thick gloves, and oil-stained tools that looked unused but recently cleaned. The door to the shed was always locked, and their uncle became visibly tense whenever they walked too close to it. He warned them never to go near the grain fields after sunset, claiming the ground there was unstable. As the days passed, the farm began to feel like it was watching them. Ethan swore he saw fresh tire tracks leading nowhere. Marissa felt vibrations under her feet at night, like something hollow beneath the ground. Luke started marking days on the calendar, counting down until they'd leave. None of them realized that this farm wasn't just where they were staying. It was where their story had already been sealed, waiting silently beneath the soil. The night of August 14th settled over the Texas farm without a breeze, the air thick and unmoving. The sky was clear, filled with stars so bright they looked sharp enough to cut through the darkness. Inside the farmhouse, the cousins tried to sleep, but the heat clung to their skin, and the silence felt unnatural. Somewhere outside, metal creaked slowly, not like wind-blown junk, but like something heavy being shifted with effort. Just after midnight, Ethan woke to a deep grinding sound that vibrated through the floorboards. It came from the direction of the grain fields. He sat up listening, his heart pounding as the noise paused, then started again, louder this time. Luke heard it too and stepped into the hallway, where the sound echoed like steel scraping against stone. Marissa stood frozen at her bedroom door, whispering that it sounded like a giant door being dragged open underground. Outside, neighbors miles away would later report hearing the same noise, a harsh metallic scream carried across the flat land. Dogs howled nonstop, refusing to calm down. One rancher said his horses kicked their stalls as if sensing danger. The sound lasted nearly 20 minutes, stopping suddenly, leaving behind a silence so deep it rang in the ears. No engines were heard, no voices, just the echo of metal and dirt. Inside the house, fear crept in slowly. The cousins gathered in the kitchen, arguing in hushed voices. Luke wanted to go outside and check the equipment, Ethan said they should wait until morning. Marissa kept staring at the back door, convinced she saw shadows moving past the window. Then came 3 sharp knocks, slow, deliberate, on the back of the house. When Luke reached for the door, the knocking stopped. By sunrise, the farmhouse stood quiet and empty. The beds were neatly made, untouched. Shoes sat by the door, phones charging on the counter. The truck was still parked outside with the keys inside. There were no footprints in the dirt, no signs of a struggle, no broken locks. It was as if the cousins had been erased in the middle of the night, leaving behind only questions and the memory of that terrible metallic scream. By late morning, sheriff's deputies flooded the Texas farm, their boots kicking up dust as they moved from barn to field. The missing persons report quickly turned into a full-scale search when officers realized nothing had been taken. Not wallets, not clothes, not the truck. Bloodhounds were brought in within hours, their noses pressed to the ground where the cousins were last seen. The dogs followed the scent only as far as the edge of the grain fields, then stopped abruptly, whining and refusing to move forward. Search teams combed every inch of the property for weeks. Helicopters circled overhead, scanning the land with heat sensors. Old wells were checked, ponds drained, and barns torn apart. Nothing surfaced. The land seemed to swallow evidence, leaving behind only scorched grass and disturbed soil that couldn't be explained. Investigators noted that one area near the abandoned fuel storage zone showed signs of recent heavy machinery, but the tracks were partially erased. The uncle was questioned repeatedly, his answers calm but carefully rehearsed. He claimed the cousins must have run away together, possibly scared by farm life or involved in drugs. But his story shifted slightly each time, especially when asked about the restricted area near the grain fields. He refused written consent to dig there, citing environmental hazards and old underground equipment. Without a warrant, law enforcement had no legal way to force a deeper search. As weeks turned into months, the case bled into the rumor mill. Some locals whispered about satanic rituals, claiming strange lights were seen over the fields at night. Others believed smugglers used the farm as a drop point and silenced anyone who got too close. A few even claimed the land was cursed, that families had disappeared from nearby properties decades earlier, though no records could confirm it. Each theory grew darker than the last. Eventually, media interest faded. Leads dried up. The case files were boxed and pushed to the back of the records room, stamped Kayaldi in red ink. Officially, the cousins were listed as missing persons with unknown fate. Unofficially, the farm earned a reputation as a place where people vanished, and where the ground kept secrets it refused to give back. After the disappearance, the farm should have been abandoned, but it never was. The uncle sold the property quietly a few years later, and the land passed from one owner to another, each believing they could turn it into something profitable. Yet, no matter who owned it, the farm resisted change. Crops failed in patches that made no sense. Irrigation lines burst without warning, and machinery broke down repeatedly in the same exact area near the old grain fields. One family that moved in during the late 1990s noticed their cattle refused to graze in a wide circle of land behind the barns. The animals would stop abruptly, snort, and turn away, as if an invisible fence stood in their path. Calves went missing without tracks or blood. At night, the owners reported a low humming sound vibrating through the ground, strongest after heavy rain, like air being pushed through hollow metal beneath the soil. Another owner, a retired engineer, brought a metal detector onto the property out of curiosity. Near the restricted section, the device went wild, shrieking nonstop before abruptly dying. Fresh batteries didn't help. Within days, his dog refused to go outside after dark, whimpering at the back door and staring toward the fields. The man sold the farm less than a year later, claiming the land felt wrong. Though he never explained further, weather seemed to behave strangely over the property. Rain would fall everywhere except one dry patch near the fuel storage zone, where the ground stayed unnaturally firm. After storms, a sharp metallic odor lingered in the air, strong enough to sting the nose. Neighbors complained of hearing deep thuds underground, spaced out like slow heartbeats, followed by long stretches of absolute silence. By the 2010s, the farm was known locally as cursed land. Buyers backed out after short visits. Real estate listings avoided mentioning its past. Yet, despite everything, no one ever dug deep enough to uncover the truth. The soil remained sealed, holding on to whatever had been placed there decades earlier, untouched and waiting. In early 2024, the farm's long silence was broken by the sound of heavy machinery. A renewable energy company had purchased the land, planning to level it for a large solar panel installation. For the first time in decades, surveyors marked off the very section of ground previous owners had avoided. Bulldozers rolled in, cutting deep into the soil under a sky that looked strangely overcast for West Texas. Within hours of digging, an excavator's bucket struck something solid with a sharp, unnatural clang. The operator shut down the machine, assuming it was old scrap metal. When workers cleared the dirt by hand, they uncovered a curved steel surface coated in thick rust. The metal wasn't random debris. It was smooth industrial and clearly manufactured to be sealed. No records showed any underground storage tanks in that location. As more soil was removed, the full shape emerged. A massive cylindrical tank buried horizontally nearly 10 feet underground. Its edges were welded shut, and heavy chains lay nearby, half-rotted but still wrapped around anchor points. The way it had been positioned suggested planning, not disposal. Construction stopped immediately, and local authorities were called to the site. Firefighters and hazmat crews arrived, concerned it might be a fuel tank still holding dangerous chemicals. As they tested the air around it, instruments began to spike, not for fuel, but for something organic. A foul odor leaked through microscopic cracks in the metal, growing stronger with each minute the tank was exposed to open air. Seasoned responders exchanged looks, already suspecting what they were dealing with. By sunset, the area was sealed off with police tape. News vans lined the dirt road, their cameras pointed at the rusted cylinder half, lifted from the ground. Officers quietly contacted cold case investigators pulling dusty files from storage. 5 years after 3 teenagers vanished without a trace, the farm had finally been forced to give up something it had hidden for decades. When officials finally cut through the rusted seal, the sound of grinding metal echoed across the empty land. The moment the tank cracked open, a wave of air rushed out, stale, heavy, and unmistakably rotten. Several responders stepped back, covering their mouths as the smell spread. It wasn't the scent of chemicals or fuel. It was the smell of time, decay, and something that had been trapped far too long. Powerful lights were lowered inside, revealing a cramped, curved interior coated in dark residue. As the beam moved slowly across the metal walls, pale shapes began to emerge from the shadows. Human bones lay tangled together at the far end of the tank. pressed into a corner as if they had tried to get as far away from the entrance as possible. The silence around the site felt suffocating as everyone realized this was no accident. Among the remains, investigators found personal items that immediately linked the discovery to the missing cousins. A rusted class ring with Ethan's initials, a thin necklace, still looped around fragments of bone, identified as Marissa's. Luke's belt buckle lay nearby, scratched and bent. These weren't objects that drifted underground over time. They were carried inside by people who never came back out. The inside walls of the tank told a more disturbing story. Deep scratch marks lined the metal, some overlapping others, running in frantic patterns toward the sealed end. Broken fingernails were embedded in dried blood along the surface. Forensic experts later confirmed the marks were made from the inside with bare hands. The cousins hadn't died instantly. They had fought the darkness, the lack of air, and each other's panic. Tests revealed soil particles and plant matter inside the tank matched the surrounding fields, proving it had been buried immediately after being sealed. Oxygen levels indicated survival for several agonizing hours, possibly longer. The realization settled heavily over the scene. While search teams walked the land above them for weeks, the cousins were trapped just yards below, unheard, unseen, and slowly running out of air. With the discovery confirmed, investigators reopened the case and turned their attention to the one man who Hadifts could not legally be questioned. The uncle. He had died years earlier, buried in a quiet cemetery 2 counties away, taking any confession with him. His financial records, however, told a different story. Just days before the cousins vanished, he had purchased a heavy industrial storage tank from a supplier in Amarillo, paying in cash and arranging late-night delivery. Old delivery logs revealed something even more troubling. The tank was dropped off after midnight, requiring specialized equipment and at least 2 workers to unload it. Yet no neighbors remembered seeing trucks that night, only hearing the metallic grinding sound that echoed across the fields. Whoever helped move that tank had vanished from the records, their names either missing or intentionally removed. Investigators searched for anyone connected to the farm during that time: temporary workers, truck drivers, even distant relatives. Several people were questioned, but memories had faded and some witnesses had already passed away. One former farmhand admitted the uncle had asked for help burying equipment, but claimed he left before anything unusual happened. His statement conflicted with physical evidence, but there was nothing concrete to charge him with. What troubled detectives most was the precision of the burial. The tank had been placed in a location that avoided detection by aerial searches and heat sensors. The soil had been packed and leveled carefully, disguising any disturbance. This wasn't panic or impulse. It was calculated. Someone understood exactly how to hide something permanently beneath open land. Today, the case is officially closed, listed as homicide with a deceased suspect. But among locals and investigators alike, one question still lingers in the air, like dust over the Texas plains. If the uncle couldn't do it alone, then who else stood in the darkness that night, helping seal 3 lives underground? And why have they never been found? When the sun sets over that Texas land today, it looks no different than any other quiet farm. The wind still moves through the dry grass, and the soil lies flat and undisturbed, as if nothing ever happened there. But beneath that calm surface is the truth. 3 young lives that never left, 3 voices that were silenced just feet below the ground. while the world searched above them. The case may be closed on paper, but the story is far from over. Somewhere, someone knows exactly what happened that night in 1989. Someone heard the metal scream, felt the ground shake, and chose to stay silent. And as long as that silence remains, the farm will never truly rest. Because some places don't forget, and some secrets don't stay buried forever.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.